And here we are at Facebook.
And you're on People's Internet now.
And we're on People's Internet now. Good morning, good afternoon, or evening, my friends, depending where you are. I'm Emily Windsor Craig, and this is where I am at 1 p.m. every Saturday, Pacific Daylight Time. Today is August 15th, 2020. Yes, and I'm having problems with my throat already. History Reset is brought to you each Saturday to bring valuable information to the public that corporate media refuse to divulge. This program is a public service, but please donate to People's Internet Radio to keep the people's truth coming at you. Today's topic is getting out of the way of what is defiling and demoting us, which has been the topic now for several weeks. I have these wonderful oxygen pills that help a lot. Okay, today we're going to kind of make a summary of everything that's coming at us and figure out what's the path through this mess. The first thing I want to say is we cannot go with what we know. Okay. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result, okay? And if you only do what you've always done, you only get what you always got. And we're in a time of judgment. And how does that work out? Okay, a lot of people don't understand what that even implies. So I'm going to read to you from the Bible, Matthew chapter 24, and you're going to find out that what we're going through now has been planned for a long, long time. 24, 38, 37. For just as the days of Noah were, so the presence of the Son of Man will be. For as they were in those days before the flood, eating and drinking, men marrying and women being given in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark. And they took no note until the flood came and swept them all away. So the presence of the Son of Man will be. Now, that's a time of judgment. A time of judgment. And Jesus talked a lot about this because he is the son of the creator Sylph, who not only was involved in the setting up of the ecosystem that we live on, but also in its repair when it crashed onto the floor of the universe under Polaris, the North Star, some tens of thousands of years ago. All right. So while he was sitting upon the Mount of Olives, the disciple approached him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your presence and of the conclusion of the system?" And in answer, Jesus said to them, "Look out, nobody misleads you. For many will come on the basis of my name, saying, 'I am the Christ,' and will mislead many. You are going to hear of wars and reports of wars. See that you are not terrified, for these things must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be food shortages and earthquakes in one place after another. All these things are a beginning of pangs of distress. Then people will deliver you up to tribulation and will kill you, and you will be objects of hatred by all the nations on account of my name." That might as well be coming out of a newspaper. All right. We live in a time that is cosmically staged to be a time of judgment. And in some places it's called the harvest. What in the hell is the harvest? The harvest is when there's so many souls, they have to get sorted out. And it's the job of the planetary sovereign to do the sorting. All right. Now, on my sites, abidemiracles.com and holyconservancy.org, are my two sites, and they deal with the topics that my father's position dealt with. Okay, he was a king and he had to deal with monarchy issues. And what are monarchy issues? One is the church, one is statecraft and law, specifically English common law, never mind these commercial treaties, and culture. Okay, and so that is the organization of what I'm going to present today, because there's so much coming at us at once. I want you, as we go, notice the videos that are presented on my timeline here at Facebook, and you will notice that we're being hit with masses of data about behaviors of people, performances, and testimonies, and investigator data dumps all at once. And I'm just going to give enough of a summary so you can see how they fit together, okay? And I'm going to start with the topic of religion, because that's where this all starts. That's where law begins in the Mosaic Law and in the Beatitudes, okay? And what came out of all of that over time became the practice of law that we have now. Now, in the monarchy of England, common law was essentially overthrown in 1588 when Queen Elizabeth I, when her navy defeated the Spanish Armada in 1588 and overwrote the Pope Innocent's declaration that the Pope owned all the souls on the world. And so when Elizabeth's navy defeated the Pope's navy, then Elizabeth felt that she, by virtue of the Maritime Admiralty, laws of the sea, had purchased all the souls on the world in 1588. And on that basis, England and Spain, of course, became competitors in discovering the New World and in making claims to whatever they discovered. Now, that practice is also going on today by NASA when they say, oh, we're going to go to the moon and we're going to build this and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. We're going to go to Mars and we're going to settle Mars and we're going to do this and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. What they're not saying to you is that the moon is a city that's owned by the people who live there, and Mars is a world that's owned by the people who may still inhabit there. There's not many people left on Mars. Okay, so our whole concept of going someplace and calling it ours, planting our flag there and saying, well, it's ours now because we got here, wrong. If that were the case, then all of these UFOs and all of these ETs that have been coming here all these years since Roswell would have taken up residence wherever it was that they landed. But we did not allow that, and nor should the moon or Mars or Uranus or Mercury or Venus allow ships from this world to come there and tell them that we own their place. Now, okay, this is part of our problem with maritime admiralty and corporate statutes, is they make presumptions and they treat everybody like, consumable products. And this is why human trafficking is all over the world, because under common law in each land, there isn't the resources to prosecute these human rights crimes that are just business, baby, by the commercial element. All right, so I wanted to start with religion because religion is where law originates. All right. Now, I don't know if you know my situation. I'm unchurched right now. The church that I technically belong to, the Episcopal Church, has gone full Monty in political correctness, and they have simply complied with and backed down with and backed away from standing for any human rights for at any time that I've ever seen. Okay, they are a very cowardly church, and that's because they belong to what is called the Reformation. They're Protestants, and they teach the Calvinist and the doctrine by the Apostle Paul is all you have to do is believe in Jesus and you're saved. You're done. That's it. It's over. And that's not why the law was given to Moses, that the people of Israel didn't have to behave in any particular way. And that's not why Jesus spent so much time articulating the Beatitudes, how people need to treat each other in intention and not only in behavior, because behavior didn't matter. So the part of the churches that teach that doctrine is all that matters, and we have free will to do whatever we want, is a part of the church that I discount totally. So what does that leave? That leaves the Anabaptists, the Catholics, and the Orthodox. All right. The liturgists and the Anabaptists. And the Anabaptists are very nice people, and I've spent quite a bit of time with the Mennonites and Quakers, but they have a very limited curriculum and a very limited reading list. And I get bored after a while, okay? So I go to the Catholic Church, and they have a deep liturgy and a deep understanding of metaphysics and a deep theological tradition. However, a large segment of their priests are homosexuals because they're forbidden to marry, and the Virgin Mary is treated as an icon, as an object, not as a member or as an archetype of matriarchy. And that's why I'm wearing my light blue today, because I want to be an archetype for matriarchy. You know what mom is for? Mom is not only for nurturing the baby she gave birth to. Mom is also for teaching kids how to behave. And teaching kids how to behave has been left out of the Protestant churches almost completely. And they don't even have a copy of the English common laws to teach their children in their private religious schools. They don't even teach the law in their schools. Okay. They do teach the Beatitudes. All right. And so I've decided that I want to take up the cause of Mary, the mother of Jesus. And, you know, she and Jesus didn't get along that well. They argued. At one point, she came to collect him while he was in the middle of a meeting. And he told her, look, you have your family, my family's here. You know, they had words all the time because she was trying to get him to behave like a good Jew, and he was trying to get the people to understand that following the letter of the law isn't the only aspect of ethical behavior. Sometimes you have to also moderate your intentions and pay attention to other people's intentions and see how you treat people. There's more to being an ethical human being than to merely follow laws that are written down in the books. And so I understand Jesus' point of view. And so what is missing from the Protestant church entirely is matriarchy. It's present in the Catholic Church, and one of the books I've picked up is a book of saints that talks about the saints who lived lives that demonstrated and role modeled how to utilize the ethic of the Beatitudes and the law to be a good person in an evil world. And I thought, wow, why aren't churches doing that? We ought to do that. So that's something I'm thinking about doing. All right, so I'm an unchurched person, but I'm completely, okay, consumed with the fact that so many of the people I know have no concept of how important family is, how important a community of like minds is. We're being methodically programmed into the belief that everybody is all one and everybody is the same and everybody is equal. And it's not true. It's not true. I know many people who are racially white, who are head trippers, who have a very dim sense of heart empathy. And so when the Black Lives Matter issue comes up, I can say, yeah, that makes sense to me, because there are people who don't operate from the heart at all. They're just in their heads. Okay, there are also friends I have who do operate from the heart, and they're not necessarily white, okay? And so operating from the heart is a matter of the matriarchy, and that's why I'm talking about matriarchy these days, because empathizing and responding from the heart is how we begin the process of healing the conflicts and disputes that we are not facing now. All right. So the subject of religion is very important to me, because for me it teaches how people behave so that they can just get along together, which is the essence of law and statecraft. Now, in the current atmosphere of the election, it's mind-blowing. The Democratic candidate is actually a candidate for a nursing home. He can't string a sentence together. And his vice presidential candidate comes to us from, she's a cop who was not a very nice cop. And the methods that they have to produce reform and law and order in a civil and decent manner reflect the Marxist-Leninist, Fabian, Frankfurt School, Saul Alinsky radical point of view that if you want to fix society, you just obliterate what's there and start over. The problem with that idea is that they don't have a method that they can put forward that predictably and historically and routinely produces a good outcome in a statecraft situation. What we know from the methods of empire, the method of the Tartarian Empire and the Roman Empire and the Greek Empire, and going back and going back and going back, is that they were all predominantly mercantile. They were all based in human slavery, human trafficking, child sacrifice. You sacrificed whoever they didn't want. There was no freedom of speech. There was no freedom of association, and on and on. Okay, every empire is based on commerce, based on rules rather than on principles that are unalienable, as we would say, from the Constitution, either the 1689 Bill of Rights in Britain or the 1789 Constitution of the United States. Those are built on principles in which human life is seen having value, whereas rules in mercantile corporate statutes say that a corporation can state to you, I will not allow you in my store unless you have a mask on your face, and you have to stand here and not there, and these rules they've come up with to relieve the problem of the pandemic just demonstrate how totalitarian mercantile corporate statutes are.
Emily?
And, yeah.
Are you going to get into some of the posts about what you made earlier? Because
okay.
Stephen has a comment.
Okay, cool. I'm
in the chat
glad.
there.
I'm glad you brought that up. All right, now. Um,
I
all right.
predict 2019 will be your year.
Oh, great. All right, my phone's talking to me. All right, now there's a Facebook post about 5G that alleges that President Trump is converting all the 5G repeaters into Tesla 432 hertz, um, what would you call it, frequency repeaters. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not. I don't know anybody who does know whether that's true or not. But if anybody does get information about that, would you please, please show up and tell us whether it's true? It sounds wonderful, because I've had a great deal of problems with 5G here in the house. I had it for a whole year till I got Comcast to turn it off. And what happened to me is that I lost half my hair. And I don't know if you've noticed on Facebook how many advertisements there are on Facebook now for women who are losing their hair, all kinds of hair oils and sprays and all kinds of remedies for losing your hair. But the reason we're losing their hair, baby, is because of the electronics that we are subject to. Okay, it's
Really?
about, yeah?
Did you see the post that Alyssa Milano, the actress, made about her losing her hair?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. What did she have to say about it?
She blamed it on COVID, though.
Of course. They blame everything on COVID. People who die in motorcycle accidents are said to have died of COVID.
Yeah.
You know, you can get shot and it's still COVID. Whatever is going on, they blame on COVID because they want COVID to be the bad thing. All right. So that's the first thing that comes up, is the 5G actually being converted to 432 hertz, which is a very positive thing. I just don't know if it's true, and I don't know anybody who does know if it's true. So that's something we can hope for. All right. The video just above that it's just a mask, and talks about the utter slavery of the corporate demands that we change our lives. Steve, didn't you have another link for that particular issue? You were telling me about it. Oh, Steve, where'd you go? I guess I lost him. Okay, he has another link on that topic about how we're being jerked around by corporate rules. For instance, I can't go to the bank and do business at the bank unless I wear a mask. All right. Here in California, people have really seen through the trickery in this pandemic. I think Steve's reference, okay, was about who the World Health Organization has now come out and said, well, you don't have to wear masks, that doesn't work, and social distancing doesn't work. And what it appears to me, what is being published is contradictions, okay? We are seeing a flow of contradictions. Yes, no, do this, don't do it. Do that, don't do it. Do something else, don't do it. And what we have to be able to do, which I pointed out in the very beginning, is transcend the contradictions. We're going to have to figure out for ourselves, if COVID-19 is a virus, all right, how do we stay away from getting it, catching it? If COVID-19, because what it does is create exosomes in the blood, just like pulmonary diseases do, just like any form of dehydration. What?
Viruses are blood-borne diseases. They don't live outside the body.
Okay, all right. That's part of the contradictions and the misinfo and the disinfo that we have to sort through. All right. And in sorting through what happens, we each have experiences with people who don't have COVID or who are said to have it. Some of us have experienced family members dying from COVID honestly, and other people have experience with family members who were in an automobile accident and were said to have died of COVID. So the contradictions and the disinfo are part of the real tragedy of mainstream media. I'll just call them confused. Let's just call them confused. Let's be nice to them. Okay. The mainstream media keeps us in confusion. Now, where I live, I have not encountered a single individual who has come down with it, either to recover from it or to die from it. It's not around here, all right? And yet, if I were to go to the bank, nobody can be served unless they are wearing their mask and stand 6 feet apart. Okay, so what I do is I call the bank and I say, look, I'm an old woman. I have congenital blood problems, problems with oxygen uptake. I am not going to wear a mask at your bank. Now, how can I do business with you? And so we come to a compromise. I am not going to stand down. I am not going to simply comply like a sheeple. I'm going to call the company and I'm going to say, look, if you want me to do business with you, here are my conditions that I impose. Okay? Now, being an old lady, I have a certain degree of autonomy. I have a certain amount of being bitchy that is acceptable. But it only goes so far. It only goes so far. And so one of the things we have to do is draw our own limits on boundaries with respect to what we are willing to do and what we are not willing to comply with. And this is one of the things I wanted to talk about today, being grandma and being a mother. The kids have to behave in a way that not only gets what they have to do done, but doesn't get them thrown in jail in the meantime. Okay, it's called compromise. All right, so WHO is now hedging on whether we need to wear masks or not. But the fact is that the corporations that we have to do business are not hedging. Okay, they're carrying on their pogrom against the rights of human beings. Now, another thing I'm doing with, corporations and I haven't been getting along for a long time. I'm very choosy about which corporations I'm even willing to do business with. Any opportunity to deal with a small business, I'll take it. Okay? A small restaurant, a small repair shop, a small dry cleaners. Okay? I don't know if dry cleaners are considered essential businesses now or not. Do you know that, Steve? Have you been to dry cleaners in the last 50 years?
Have I been to one in the last? Yeah, I've been to one a couple of years ago, but I haven't. There are people using the dry cleaners around my area, so it must be a essential position.
Yeah, it's an essential business. And so we stay with the small essential businesses because the program.
Well, I would think it would have to be essential because there are quite a few people that live in trailer parks and homes just don't have those type of amenities. They don't have washers. They don't have dryers.
No, I'm not talking about laundromats. I know all the laundromats are open. I'm talking about dry cleaners.
Oh, dry cleaners.
I grew up in dry cleaning.
Yeah.
At one time, I had to take the state exam to run my father's wholesale dry cleaning plant because he was sick. I know everything about dry cleaning. Okay, I grew up in it. I know every skill that has to run it. It's a very dangerous business. Perchloroethylene is a great way to get lung cancer. All right, so it's not a business I would want to have anything to do with. But that's
Yeah.
why I asked if it's considered essential or not, because I don't own anything that has to be dry cleaned. I know better. All right, but that's just another story. So we're being pogromed by corporations who have made these declarations about we have to do this and have to do that in order to do business with them. Now, starting yesterday, PG&E in California is doing rotating outages because the demand for air conditioning is pushing them to the max on their energy use. And so people are losing electricity for a couple hours a day, and they're rightfully upset about it. So this is the time to think, well, do I want to have solar panels on the roof? Do I want to get a generator? Do I want to generate my own electricity? Honestly, all right. People are sick and tired of rent receipts. They're sick and tired of mortgage payments and tax payments and repairs and upkeep and insurance and everything you have to pay to keep up a property. A property is like a boat. A boat is the hole in the water you throw your money into, and a piece of property is a hole in the ground you throw your money into. So what are people doing? Sales of RVs and trucks and conversions are skyrocketing. People are leaving real estate and leaving rentals in order to have a smaller footprint, a smaller financial footprint in their survival costs. All right. Now, personally, I'm too old to do that. Okay. But a lot of people are now going RVing as a way of life. They're full-timing in RVs because they don't want the overhead of real estate property. All right. And this is driven, of course, by all of the costs associated with buying and selling property in the real estate industry and the title companies and insurance companies and attorneys and all those layers of paperwork that are associated with owning property. The problem with owning property, of course, has to do with title. If you have a form of title, like allodial title, where nobody can do anything to you, that's nice. But when you only have conditional title, then you're subject to liens and taxes and all kinds of expenses, sometimes condominium fees, that are truly astronomical. And people are tired of it. And that's why NESARA and GESARA, the proposal to completely overturn the currency system into a gold-based system, will also require the forgiveness of all mortgages and credit accounts, so that we are no longer strapped down to debts and usury and paperwork and legal work and all of the stuff that goes with it. There
Who is
is
saying this, Emily?
Yeah, pardon?
Who is saying this?
Who is saying this? Who is saying that? Who is saying what?
I've been hearing this from the Q people.
Oh, okay. Well, the Q people have been talking about it, but there are other people from the Far East in the Philippines and Japan. Ben Fulford has been talking about this. He's not a Q people. And I forget the guy's name who's in Indonesia, who's been talking about the gold market and how we can repair our currency system, because the Illuminati goal of doing all currency as digital and forcing everybody into a digital footprint And if they don't like somebody, as in China, if you have a bad social score, you can't get a loan and you can't travel and you can't do this and you can't do that. That's so totalitarian that most of us don't want to have any part of it. Okay. These masks are helping in China. They're helping the people get lost from the facial recognition software that has been instituted in China. But the countries that are totalitarian and unreasonable lately, if you check with Chave, Chave, Weather on YouTube, the countries that are known to be very totalitarian and unreasonable and have no respect for human rights are getting hammered. They're getting hammered by floods, locusts, ice storms, okay? Somehow the reset operation is coming from the sky and really tearing China out by its guts, okay? And so maybe China is getting some cosmic discipline. Would we might think of it that way? China has been very mean to its people now going on 40 or 50 years, and now China is being hammered in every which way by acts of God. Is there a relationship between A and B? Well, we have to wonder about that. Okay, that's something else we notice matches Matthew 24 that I read a little while ago, right? So let's look at some of the other videos that I have been, are on my timeline here at Facebook today. And the one that has been jumping out at me from all sorts of sources are Millie, who has investigated and interviewed people involved in the corporate takeover of governmental functions like Serco, all right? Corporations bid for government contracts, and the corporations that act in the government's place do not have the same ethic as the advertised ethic of government itself. Government's supposed to be transparent, and government's fundings are supposed to be transparent, and government is supposed to be honest, and da 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 da. But when Congress lets out defense contracts and intel contracts and covert operations contracts under military contracts, the government and Congress and the president lose control over the ethics of the operation. I remember George Herbert Walker Bush back about 20 years ago talking about what Halliburton and Kellogg and what were DynCorp and Blackwater. These were corporations that do dirty work for the government under government contracts, so they don't have to follow the rules and limits and boundaries of Congress and law. And so they don't. Okay. And that's probably the reason why human trafficking is such a problem now, because the people who make money on selling bodies have found so many legal ways to get away with it. Okay, remember in the 70s when human resource management was new, and the first thing that they did was institute the resume. And the resume requires hours and hours and hours of work to finally get a final copy, and then you send out dozens or hundreds of copies in hope that somebody will pay attention to it. And maybe if they pay attention to it, you can spend the money to travel to the site where the resume is going to be considered, and you can interview 1 or 2 times, and you may get the job and you may not. When I was just coming up into adulthood, there was no such thing as a resume. If you wanted a job, you went to the personnel office of the company you wanted to work for. You showed up there, you filled out an application, they talked to you, and if they wanted you, they hired you on the spot. There was no 3-step, 6 steps of division between the first meeting with the company and getting hired. A whole protection racket has been created in human resource management to make hiring into such a complicated process that it never needed to be in the first place. Okay, this is what we call a protection racket. All right, the writing of prescriptions instead of using safe, non-invasive healing modalities, the simple writing of prescriptions and vaccines and so on, visits and procedures and tests and so on. These are protection rackets. These are not necessarily doing anything to ameliorate the problems of the people who present themselves for problem solutions. Okay. Oh, and the oh my goodness. The information just keeps flooding in and flooding in. The films now about corruption in the intel and covert ops and contracting domains are very specific. They name names, they name companies, and we can see the extent to which maritime admiralty law, corporate statutes have simply plowed English common law and common laws of the land under and wrapped around common laws so that you can be sued even when you never committed harm, you never harmed anybody in your life, you can be sued. We see that in the case against General Flynn, okay? We see that in what is happening to Julian Assange, who went to such trouble and pains to present to the public an accurate record of what the government was actually doing. All right. Edward Snowden is another example. And then McClintock finally got exonerated in the UK. All right. Whistleblowers. Okay. Whistleblowers are usually rewarded by being sent to heaven. I have a Facebook page called Departed Martyrs, which is nothing but the litany and the obituaries of the whistleblowers and the saints and the decent people who tried to get problems solved, but who were caught in the middle of sharing their story by the deep state system and were often taken down and taken down and taken down, particularly in the UFO and ET and anthropology disciplines. People are not allowed to tell their story because doctrine and dogma run academia. Doctrine and dogma run the church. Doctrine and dogma run the space agencies. Doctrine and dogma run medicine. Doctrine and dogma run law. And how we see this is that the process of going through making a report and having the report be listened to and taken seriously gets so convoluted that recently in the review of General Flynn's case, the latest judge only talked about errors in the process of paperwork. He never talked about the final destination of justice, whether General Flynn had actually harmed anybody or not. And this is typical of deep state legalism, where they get all bound up in the jots and tittles of paperwork and they don't pay any attention to the harm that was caused or the good that was done. They don't pay any attention to effects and results on the ground. And so here we are. Whom can we believe? Okay, We have to transcend the contradictions and basically back away and stay out of trouble and keep our heads down until the final day of confrontation. When the final day of confrontation comes and the system that is exploiting and abusing all of us is
That's
brought.
going to be soon.
What?
That's going to be soon.
Talk to me. Tell me about that.
Look at what Australia is doing.
What's going on in Australia?
Complete lockdowns, 8 p.m. curfews. You can only go outside for an hour. Have to wear your mask outside in your car.
So what's going to bring that to an end?
Probably a revolt.
Well, but if everybody's intimidated, see, that's the problem, is that
They're only going to be
everybody's
intimidated for so long.
Well,
just like us Americans.
I know. So intimidated that you're afraid to think about the problem. I get this all the time from my own family. They don't want to think about it.
Fear drives people.
Yeah. It drives people to cling to their habits, to cling to what they know, to cling to what's certain. And so what I'm here to say as an old lady, look, nobody gets out of here in an intact meat suit in any case. We have nothing to lose except our fear when we stand on principle and declare our limits on what we are willing to do. Now,
Lori,
yeah?
Lori has a question for you.
Oh, okay, I didn't get that. What's Lori up to? Lori, I have been researching these issues since I was matriculated at George Mason University in the master's program in conflict and dispute analysis and resolution beginning in 1988. Okay. So my master's degree is in conflict and dispute analysis. And since I took the methods from grad school, namely phenomenology and heuristics, computer modeling. And that's how I built my knowledge base about what's going on. I was able to categorize things so that in my files of photographs, for instance, I have 18,000 photographs that I routinely use to illustrate matters that are of importance now. It's just, I've been studying this stuff like 12 hours a day for, what are we talking about, almost 40 years.
32.
32 years, okay. And I'm obsessed with it, okay, I admit that. I'm OCD because it's so crazy. It's just so crazy. I mean, how can you put up with this? How can you have a family that can talk to each other?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. How do we get the family to talk to each other when one's in the military and one's in IT and one teaches yoga and one's in construction? They don't talk to each other anymore. So I've lost my family.
It's set up that way deliberately.
Yes, it's set up that's Marxism for you.
That's that's cultural Marxism.
Cultural
exactly.
Marxism, right? And
I get stupid looks from people when I tell them that I bought and read both Karl Marx's book, and I've also bought and read Saul Alinsky's book.
And they're all about tearing everything down.
Rules for Radicals.
Yeah, it's all just about tearing everything down as if that was going to fix it. How does that work? How does that work? Just tear it. Your house need repairs? Burn it down. All right. They are.
Blame Trump.
Pardon me.
And blame Trump.
And blame Trump. Right. Blame Trump for what the Congress has been doing since the removal of JFK and blame Trump, who's only been in politics for 3 years. Now,
Well, the Congress and Trump is the president of the U.S. corporation, the corporation of the United States, and the Congress and the Senate, they're only what are they called in corporations? They're
yes, they are corporations too, but they are also
right.
mostly temporary, and the ones who are permanent are the senior executive service and the middle management, okay, the bureaucrats in the Department of Justice and the FBI and the CIA and the DEA, and let's see, the NSA and the NASA and the office of, what is it that looks over everything NASA does. And I send them nastygrams all the time, and I show them how their doctrines are incorrect. And I just, what you're teaching is incorrect here. Here, look at what, here's a picture of what you're talking about, and what you're saying does not match the picture. And I send that to them all the time.
Right.
And I will continue to do that as long as I have a breath in me. And there's, they can kill me, fine. That's the same outcome I'm going to have anyway. So why worry? That's the same, I'm 76, I'm pushing 80. They want to kill me, well, then they can have the karma. But I'm going to stand for what is correct, and that is common law justice, laws against harm, treachery, protection rackets, and divisiveness. I'm going to stand for people being able to have a choice, have an option, and consent to what they are required to do. Okay, I'm going to stand for those rights, whatever the cost, whatever the outcome. And that's why I do this on Saturdays, because most people are just so busy and so desperate to make a living. They don't have time to think about this stuff.
No, they're up until, what was it, 5 or 6 years ago, 6 or 8 years ago, whatever it was, people could work one single job for 40 hours a week, and then
and make a living.
Puppet Obama changed that to where small businesses could only hire somebody for like 27, 28 hours.
Okay,
And they got tax breaks. So people had to get 2 and 3 jobs to make that same kind of money that they were making.
What happened? See, my dad hired the same employees in his dry cleaning plant for 23 years. He had the same employees. Mm-hmm. And in those days, we're talking 50 years ago, okay, they made $1.35 an hour, and they were union. They were union. And they stayed with him the whole 23 years. As long as they worked and he worked, they worked together. And they got along. There was no enmity between the company and the employees, which has been set up in human resource management and in Department of Labor executive orders, I guess you'd say. That whole resume fraud scam has made hiring into a problem that never needed to exist. And that's what has kept me out of the job market. I'm not putting up with it. So we have a lot of judgments we have to make about what our limits and boundaries ought to be, which means we can't just go with what we knew. We can't just believe what we were told yesterday. If WHO, the World Health Association, comes out tomorrow and says you have to wear masks again, whereas yesterday they said you don't have to wear masks anymore, we have to deal with it. We can't just say, oh, well, it's just disinfo. There's more to it than that. Where you live, people are either getting the virus or they're not getting the virus. You need to know that.
You know what I'm thinking?
What?
They are trying to make these masks mandatory. A lot of us do know. I've already heard from people in my area from stores. They're getting sick, wearing these masks for eight hours a day
Yes.
at their work, 5 days a week, whatever the case is. But
Yes.
they can't work there. Their store or whatever the place happens to be has been told by the governor, our loving Nazi wannabe Lady Fuhrer
Okay.
over here again, that it's mandatory. That
This
you
is
can't
what I would do. This is
inside.
what I would do.
They are, well,
Okay,
hang on.
if that were me, if I had a 40-hour-a-week job and they told me I had to wear a mask, okay, I would go to my doctor and have the doctor show and demonstrate how the mask made me sick. I would take that report to my supervisor. I would
they don't-
stand with their supervisor to the manager's office, to the CEO's office,
Right.
and we would
But you know-
clarify it.
Right, but you know what's coming though, right?
Oh, yeah.
My hands are tied. I can't do anything about that.
And that's what people believe is true. And those are the people who are going to perish because they take no note.
Yes,
Okay.
hundreds of thousands of them are going to be sick. I don't know about this facial recognition that's 6 feet. It doesn't really make sense.
No.
I mean, I understand the 6 feet and the cameras and the facial recognition because it would be so much easier for the cameras to pick somebody up that they want to drag out of the store in front of everyone in daylight because you're a terrorist and you don't want to wear a mask. By the way, we only have about a couple minutes left.
I know. We've
Want to wrap it up, or
beat this stuff to death. Well, I don't go to stores that require masks. I don't do business with companies that are following these pogroms. I boycott them. I boycott them all.
I've been
Don't go to movies. I don't buy movies. I don't buy videos. I don't buy games. I just boycott everything that's totalitarian. And that's the only thing that I'm lawfully allowed to do.
Well, I've been pretty lucky myself because I walk in the store or whatever the case is, and they say, "Do you have a mask?" And I say, "Well, I have heart disease, I have COPD, I have diabetes, I have anxieties, I have depression, and I have a few other things." And they say, "Oh, well, okay, we'll go on in."
Yeah, and
I've
I'm the
been
same way.
very lucky. They haven't given me a lot of crap.
Well, at the bank, they won't let me in without a mask, so I don't go in.
Well, they let me in for the same reason. They ask if I have a mask, and I tell them the same reasons, and they say, okay.
Well, what they said at my bank was, you stand here and we'll take your stuff to the teller and I'll bring it back to you. They wouldn't let me in without a mask, no matter what my circumstances were. And so now I only call the bank and ask them how to deal with them by mail. I will not go there.
Yep.
I'm just not having it. And that's what more people have to do. Put their foot down and say, I'll go this far, but I won't go any further. And my heart just aches for people who have children now, and the children are being taught anti-family and anti-community bullshit in the Common Core curriculum. Parents have got to read their kids' textbooks. Those textbooks are filthy.
Yep.
They're filthy. And parents have to know why our kids are such brats now, because they're being trained into bratness.
They're being trained into cultural Marxism.
Absolutely, absolutely true. Okay, so stand on principle and we'll get through this.
Okay, you ready to wrap this up?
I'm ready to wrap this up, sweetheart. It's been fun. It's a lot more fun when there's the two of us to bat things back and forth. And so This has been Emily Windsor-Craig and History Reset. And I hope we've given everybody today a shot in the arm. That's what we tried to do.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, now here we are back at Facebook. And I don't know about you, but I've had fun today. And my purpose was to give everybody a shot in the arm and tell you, no, you're not crazy. What you're seeing is crazy. And the best we can do is to transcend the contradictions and figure out what's going on directly around us. What do we have to deal with, and set our limits and boundaries. Okay, if any business is snotty, I just don't deal with them. Tell them to go find a customer somewhere else. And if you're still trying to make a living, all right, what worked for me when I was still in the workforce was prayer. Prayer is effective because what prayer constitutes, prayer is telepathy. And there are beings that we cannot see or touch or interact with normally who pay attention to people who are working at being decent and being good. And so if you're involved in a relationship with the higher dimensions, with the rest of the universe, with God, with the angels, and you acknowledge that the mother of Jesus can stand for the principle of matriarchy, and we're not only nurturing, but it is the job of the mother and the grandmother to get the kids to behave, let's do that. Let's do that. Let's make the children in our society act decently and in a civil manner, and stop just ignoring us, okay? This has been Emily Windsor Craig, and we'll see you in a day or so. Love you all. Bye-bye.